The ceiling beam cracked above my head with a sound like thunder, and I didn't even flinch anymore. 3 days locked in this death trap had taught me that flinching was pointless. If the ruins of Blackthorn Manor wanted to crush me, they would. Dust rained down as another tremor shook the walls, and I pressed myself against the cold stone floor of what had once been a wine cellar, now my tomb. My stepmother's laughter still echoed in my ears from when she'd shoved me through the doorway. Let the ghost have you, since you love this place so much. But she was wrong about one thing. The ghost didn't want to kill me. It wanted to help me destroy them all. I hadn't always been here, waiting to die in the darkness with only a vengeful spirit for company. 6 months ago, I'd been sitting in the sunlit drawing room of our estate, embroidering a handkerchief I'd never finish, while my stepsister Vanessa showed off her engagement ring to a room full of preening socialites. The diamond caught the light like a star, and everyone cooed appropriately. No one looked at me. They never did. "Isn't it magnificent?" Vanessa gushed, extending her hand so the other women could admire it more closely. Richard spared no expense. Of course, he knows quality when he sees it. My father sat in his leather chair by the window, beaming with pride at his stepdaughter. He'd married Celeste, Vanessa's mother, when I was 8 years old, 2 years after my own mother died. I'd been foolish enough to hope for a new family. What I got instead was 12 years of being erased. "Elena," Celeste called sharply, and I looked up from my embroidery. My stepmother was beautiful in the way a porcelain doll was beautiful, perfect, cold, and hollow. "Fetch more tea. Can't you see our guests' cups are empty?" I was 20 years old, the biological daughter of the house, and I was being treated like a servant. But I stood anyway, setting aside my needlework. My father didn't even glance my way. "Oh, let the maid do it," Vanessa said with a dismissive wave. "Elena, you're blocking the light. Move." I moved. That night, I overheard them in my father's study. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I'd been walking past on my way to the library, but my own name stopped me cold. "We need to do something about Elena," Celeste said, her voice crisp and businesslike. "What do you mean?" My father sounded distracted, probably reviewing business documents. "She's 20 now, Marcus. People are starting to ask questions. Why isn't she married? Why doesn't she attend events? They're beginning to whisper that something's wrong with her." "Let them whisper." "It reflects badly on Vanessa," Celeste pressed. "Having a strange, unmarried stepsister lurking about. It's not good for the family image." There was a long pause. Then my father, my own father, said, "What do you suggest?" "I've been thinking about Blackthorn Manor." My blood ran cold. Blackthorn Manor was the crumbling estate my mother's family had owned for generations. It sat on the edge of our property, abandoned for decades, after a series of mysterious deaths had given it a cursed reputation. The locals said it was haunted by the ghost of a woman who'd been murdered there, and that anyone who entered never came out sane. "You want to send her there?" My father's voice held a note of uncertainty. "Not permanently," Celeste said smoothly. "Just to have her sort through the old documents and valuables. It needs to be done eventually, and Elena is so good at being useful. It would keep her occupied and out of the way during Vanessa's wedding preparations." "The place is falling apart. It's dangerous." "Then she should be careful," Celeste replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. That conversation was 3 months ago. They'd waited until after Vanessa's wedding, a lavish affair where I'd been relegated to the background, barely acknowledged, before Celeste brought it up again. This time, my father didn't hesitate. Within a week, I was given my marching orders. Go to Blackthorn Manor, catalog the remaining items of value, and don't come back until the job was done. They gave me no supplies, no help, no way to call for assistance. The manor had no electricity, no running water. The nearest neighbor was miles away. When I'd protested, my father had finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw nothing but inconvenience in his eyes. "Your mother left that property in trust for you," he said coldly. It's your responsibility. Stop being so useless and do something to earn your keep." So I'd gone. The first day at Blackthorn Manor had been terrifying. The structure groaned and shifted constantly, walls weeping with damp, floors rotted through in places. I'd set up camp in the least damaged room and tried to make sense of the chaos. The second day, I'd found the journals, leather-bound books filled with my great-grandmother's handwriting. detailing the history of the house and the woman who died here. Her name was Catherine Blackthorne, and she'd been murdered by her own family in 1847. They'd wanted her inheritance, so they'd poisoned her and made it look like suicide. But Catherine hadn't gone quietly into death. According to the journals, she'd cursed the house and everyone in it. Within a year, every person involved in her murder had died in twisted, horrible ways. The third day, the house had tried to kill me. I'd been in the library, standing on a ladder to reach the upper shelves when the entire bookcase pulled away from the wall. I should have fallen, should have broken my neck on the marble floor below. Instead, I felt hands, cold, invisible hands, catch me and set me gently on the ground. The bookcase crashed down where I'd been standing moments before. "Thank you," I'd whispered to the empty air, and I felt those cold hands pat my shoulder. That night, I dreamed of Catherine. She appeared as she must have looked in life. Dark hair, fierce eyes, a sharp intelligence in her face. But there was rage there too, centuries of it, burning like a star. "They tried to kill you," she said, and her voice echoed like it was coming from underwater. "Your own blood, just like mine." "I know." "Do you want revenge?" I'd never been a vengeful person. I'd spent my whole life trying to be good, to be worthy of love, to earn my place, but lying there in that rotting manor, abandoned by everyone who should have protected me, something hard and cold crystallized in my chest. "Yes," I said. Catherine smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful, and then let me teach you. I woke to find her standing at the foot of my makeshift bed, still translucent, but more solid than in the dream. She was real, the ghost of Blackthorn Manor was real, and she was offering me power. Over the next weeks, Catherine taught me everything. She showed me the secret passages in the walls, the hidden rooms, the places where her murderers had stashed their stolen treasures. She taught me how to read the house's moods, how to make it obey me instead of trying to kill me. Most importantly, she taught me the truth about my own family. My mother hadn't died of illness, as I'd been told. She'd been poisoned. The revelation came when Catherine led me to a hidden compartment in the master bedroom. Inside was a letter, written in my mother's hand, dated a week before her death. She'd discovered that my father had been embezzling from her family trust, the same trust that had made him wealthy. When she'd confronted him, he'd promised to make it right. Instead, he'd killed her. I sat on the dusty floor reading my mother's words, her fear, her hope that she was wrong, her desperate love for me. And something inside me broke and reformed, harder than before. "Celeste knows," Catherine said softly. "She helped him. They've been stealing from your inheritance for years. The trust that should have made you wealthy? They've drained it almost dry. They're planning to demolish this manor and sell the land, pocketing the money that should be yours." "How do you know all this?" Catherine's smile was grim. "Ghosts can go anywhere, dear. I've been watching them for months, ever since they started planning to send you here. They were hoping the house would kill you in an accident. Then everything would be theirs." The cold rage that had been building in me since my father sent me here crystallized into clarity. "We need proof." "Oh, I can get you proof," Catherine said. "But first, we need to make sure you survive. They're coming tomorrow." She was right. The next morning, I heard voices approaching the manor. Through a cracked window, I saw Celeste and Vanessa picking their way across the overgrown grounds, both dressed in black as if they were already in mourning. "Are you sure she's still in there?" Vanessa asked nervously. "It's been almost a month." "Where else would she go?" Celeste replied. "No money, no friends. She's probably half dead by now." "Maybe we should check and risk the house collapsing on us? Don't be stupid. We'll give it another week, then report her missing. Her body will never be found in this ruin." Tragic accident. They were 20 feet from the front entrance when Catherine made her move. The front steps, already damaged, gave way completely. Both women screamed as they fell into the cellar below, not far enough to kill them, but enough to hurt. I watched from my window as they scrambled out, muddy and terrified, and ran back to their car. "That was a warning," Catherine said beside me. "But you can't stay here forever. We need a plan." The plan took shape over the next few days. Catherine showed me everything she'd observed: my father's secret accounts, The forged documents transferring money from my trust, the life insurance policy he'd taken out on me with himself as beneficiary. She'd even found the poison he'd used to kill my mother. The same poison Celeste had been adding to the food they'd sent with me to the manor, not enough to kill quickly, but enough to make me sick and weak. I'd been eating only the canned goods I'd found in the manor's old pantry, trusting nothing they'd given me. That instinct had saved my life. But observation wasn't enough. We needed evidence that would hold up legally, and we needed leverage. Catherine had power in the manor, but outside its walls, she was limited. I would have to be the one to act. "There's something else," Catherine said on the seventh night. "Something I haven't told you. The Blackthorn curse isn't just legend, it's real, and it's bound to the bloodline, your blood." She led me to the room where she'd died, a small chamber that had once been a study. The walls were still stained with old blood, her blood. In the center of the floor was a circle of symbols, barely visible under decades of dust. "My family thought they could bind my power, trap me here," Catherine explained. "They were partially right, I can't leave the grounds, but the curse can. It's designed to punish those who harm a Blackthorn daughter. Your mother was a Blackthorn. You are a Blackthorn, and you've been harmed. What does the curse do? It gives you power over those who've wronged you. They become susceptible to misfortune. The worse their crimes, the worse their luck. And if you consciously direct it..." She smiled. "Well, let's just say justice has a way of being served, Ed." She taught me the words, the gestures, the way to activate what was already in my blood. It felt like lighting a match in my veins, a warm, electric sensation that spread through my body and out into the world. I could feel them suddenly. My father and Celeste and Vanessa, like threads I could pull. "Don't use it frivolously," Catherine warned. "The curse takes energy from you. Use it strategically when it matters most." I practiced on small things, for Celeste's favorite vase falling and shattering, Vanessa's car getting a flat tire on her way to a society luncheon, my father's computer crashing and losing an important document. Each incident gave me a fierce satisfaction, but Catherine was right. I needed to be strategic. The real work began when Catherine helped me leave the manor. The house itself had been keeping me trapped, responding to my family's desires. But now that I'd bonded with Catherine, it obeyed me instead. We planned my escape carefully. On the night I left, I set a trap. Catherine helped me weaken several key support beams in the manor's main hall, making it look like natural decay. Then I called my father from an old phone I'd found and managed to get working. "Hello?" His voice was surprised, wary. "Father, it's Elena. I need help. The manor is collapsing. I'm trapped in the wine cellar. Please come." There was a long pause. I could almost hear him calculating whether it was worth the trip. Finally, "I'll send someone." "No, please, I'm scared. I need you." Another pause, then grudgingly, "Fine, I'll be there in an hour." He came, but not alone. Celeste and Vanessa were with him, probably wanting to see my demise firsthand. I watched from my hiding place in the trees as they entered the manor, calling my name. They made it to the wine cellar, where I'd left signs of my supposed presence, a torn piece of my dress, some scattered belongings. "She's not here," Vanessa said nervously. "Where is she?" "Probably dead somewhere," Celeste replied. "Good riddance." That's when I triggered the collapse. Not enough to kill them, I wasn't a murderer, but enough to trap them in the cellar for several hours while I executed the next phase of my plan. Catherine had given me copies of everything: bank statements, forged documents, emails between my father and Celeste discussing their plans. I'd spent the previous week scanning them all with the old scanner I'd found and uploading them to a secure cloud storage. Now I sent them everywhere: to the police, to the district attorney, to the board of directors at my father's company, to every major newspaper in the state. The subject line was simple: Marcus Hartley murdered his wife and embezzled millions from his daughter. Then I called the police and reported my family trapped in the collapsing manor, giving them the exact location. I made sure to mention that I'd left them there after discovering they'd tried to kill me. By the time the rescue crews pulled them out, bruised and shaken, the news had already broken. My father's company stock was plummeting. The police were waiting with handcuffs, reporters swarmed the scene, and I stood there, covered in dust but very much alive, and told them everything. The trial was a media sensation. The evidence was overwhelming. Catherine's ghostly reconnaissance had been thorough. The poison found in my mother's exhumed body matched the poison in the food Celeste had sent to the manor. The financial records showed years of systematic theft. My father's own emails laid out the plan to kill me and take the property. Vanessa tried to claim innocence, but Catherine's observations had caught her too. She'd been complicit in the financial fraud, using the stolen money to fund her lavish lifestyle. Her new husband divorced her before the trial even ended. The curse I'd activated didn't need much directing after that. Natural consequences took care of most of it. My father's business partners turned on him. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed. Celeste's society friends abandoned her. Vanessa's perfect life crumbled into scandal and debt. But I made sure to add a few supernatural touches. The night before sentencing, all three of them reported being haunted, seeing Catherine's face in mirrors, hearing her voice in empty rooms, feeling cold hands around their throats. Their lawyers tried to use it as an insanity defense. It didn't work. My father got 25 years for murder and embezzlement. Celeste got 20 for conspiracy and attempted murder. Vanessa got 10 for fraud and conspiracy. The judge showed no mercy. The day they were led away in chains, I stood on the courthouse steps and felt nothing but peace. Catherine stood beside me, invisible to everyone else, but solid and real to me. "Justice," she said softly. "Justice," I agreed. The aftermath took months to sort out. The courts returned everything my father had stolen, plus damages. The trust my mother had left me was restored and grew exponentially with the sale of my father's seized assets. I was suddenly wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined. Not just comfortable, but genuinely rich. I hired the best architects and builders in the country to restore Blackthorn Manor. Catherine and I supervised every detail together. The house had protected me, and I would protect it in return. We preserved her room as a memorial, restored the library where she'd spent so many happy hours, brought the gardens back to life. It took 2 years, but when we were finished, Blackthorn Manor was magnificent. The locals still whispered that it was haunted, but now the stories had changed. Now they said the ghost protected the house and its rightful heir. They weren't wrong. I opened a foundation in my mother's name, helping young women escape abusive families. The manor became a haven, offering temporary shelter and resources. Catherine approved wholeheartedly. She'd always wanted the house to be a place of life and safety, not death and fear. My father wrote to me once from prison, a rambling letter full of self-pity and half-hearted apologies. I burned it without finishing. Celeste never reached out at all. Vanessa tried several times, claiming she'd been manipulated, that she'd had no choice. I ignored every letter. 5 years after the trial, I threw a party at the restored manor. I invited everyone who'd ever looked down on me, everyone who'd ignored me when I was invisible in my own home. They came, curious about my transformation from overlooked stepdaughter to wealthy philanthropist and local legend. Catherine and I had planned every detail. The manor looked stunning, lit by hundreds of candles, filled with flowers and music. I wore a dress the color of midnight, my dark hair swept up, my mother's emerald necklace, recovered from my father's safe, glinting at my throat. I welcomed them all with perfect grace, played the hostess with elegant ease. They whispered among themselves, amazed at the change in me, wondering how they'd never noticed me before. I smiled and accepted their compliments and said nothing about the cold presence always at my shoulder, or the way the manor itself seemed to pulse with protective energy. At the height of the evening, I raised my glass in a toast. To new beginnings, I said, and to old debts finally paid. The guests drank, not understanding, but Catherine understood. She stood beside me, her ghostly hand in mine, and we looked out over the life we'd built from ruin and rage. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I walked through the quiet manor. It no longer felt haunted in the scary way. It felt inhabited, loved, protected. Catherine appeared beside me in the library, more solid than I'd ever seen her. "You've done well," she said. "Better than I ever did in life." "I had help," I reminded her. I had you. And you'll always have me. The house is ours now, yours and mine. No one will ever hurt a Blackthorn daughter here again. I thought about my mother, dead before her time. I thought about Catherine, murdered by her own blood. I thought about myself, thrown away like garbage, left to die in a collapsing ruin. But we'd all survived it in our own ways. We'd all fought back, and we'd won. The manor settled around us with a contented creak, and somewhere in the distance I heard what might have been laughter or might have been the wind. I chose to believe it was laughter. I slept peacefully that night in the room I'd made my own, the room where I'd first met Catherine. In my dreams, she showed me visions of the future, the women we'd help, the lives we'd save, the legacy we'd build. The Blackthorn curse had been one of vengeance, but we were transforming it into something else: protection, justice, power used for good. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the restored windows, painting everything gold. I could hear birds singing in the gardens, the sound of life returning to a place that had known too much death. I went downstairs to make coffee in the modern kitchen we'd installed, still marveling at how far I'd come. A year ago, I'd been invisible, unloved, dying slowly from neglect and poison. Now I had purpose, wealth, power, and a supernatural guardian who'd become my closest friend. The morning news played on the tablet propped on the counter. I almost ignored it, but a familiar name caught my attention. Former businessman Marcus Hartley was attacked by some fellow inmates yesterday at the state correctional facility. His condition is listed as serious but stable. Sources say the attack was unprovoked. I felt a cold presence beside me. Catherine materialized, looking satisfied. "Did you?" I started to ask. "He was bragging about getting parole in 10 years, she said simply, about how he'd get out and reclaim what was his. I thought he needed a reminder that some debts outlast prison sentences. I should have felt disturbed, but I didn't. My father had killed my mother, tried to kill me, and shown not an ounce of true remorse. If Catherine's curse wanted to remind him that actions had consequences, who was I to argue? What about Celeste and Vanessa?" I asked. "Celeste is in solitary confinement after claiming ghosts were attacking her," Catherine said with a grim smile. "The prison psychiatrist has her on heavy medication. Vanessa," she paused, looking almost regretful. "Vanessa is trying to turn her life around. She got her degree through a prison program. She writes letters to the foundation, trying to help other women avoid her mistakes." "Should we help her?" Catherine considered. "Her crimes were lesser. She was young, influenced by her mother. If she's truly changed..." She looked at me. "It's your decision." I thought about the stepsister who dismissed me, mocked me, stood by while her mother plotted my death. But I also remembered that she'd been only 18 when it started, barely older than a child, shaped by Celeste's cruelty. "When she gets out," I said slowly, "Ashas, if she's serious about changing, we'll help her. Supervised carefully, but we'll give her a chance." Catherine nodded approval. "Mercy tempered with caution. Your mother would be proud." Over the next months, the foundation flourished. We helped dozens of women escape dangerous situations, providing them with resources, legal aid, and temporary shelter at the manor. Catherine attended every intake meeting, invisible to our guests, but helping me read their situations, identify who truly needed help and who might be trying to take advantage. Her ghostly abilities made her an invaluable partner. She could scout situations, verify stories, even appear in dreams to warn women of danger. More than once, she stopped an abusive family member from tracking a woman to our shelter, using the full force of the Blackthorn curse to send them away in terror. We became known as a place of last resort. If you had nowhere else to go, if your situation was dire, Blackthorn Manor would take you in. The local domestic violence organizations worked closely with us. The police knew to send women our way when official resources were maxed out. I hired staff carefully, all people who understood trauma and believed in our mission. Some were survivors themselves. A few, I suspected, could sense Catherine's presence, though none ever said anything directly. The manor had a reputation now: safe for those who needed sanctuary, terrifying for those who meant harm. One autumn evening, 3 years after opening the foundation, a young woman arrived at our gates. She was barely 20, bruised and bleeding, clutching a baby. Security called me immediately. I met her in the entrance hall, the same hall where I'd trapped my family years ago. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "Please," she whispered. "They said you help people. My husband, he tried to kill me. He said he'd take the baby if I left. I don't know where else to go." I knelt beside her, mindful of her injuries, and took her hand gently. "You're safe now. We'll protect you both, I promise." Catherine materialized beside me, looking at the young mother with fierce protectiveness. The woman couldn't see her, but her baby could. The infant's eyes tracked Catherine's movement, and she reached out with tiny hands toward the ghost. Catherine's expression softened into wonder. "Children can see me," she murmured. "I'd forgotten." We got the woman medical care, contacted the police, started the process of securing a restraining order. Her husband tried to find her once, showing up at the manor gates in a rage, threatening to burn the place down. He made it 3 steps onto the property before Catherine manifested fully, a terrifying vision of ghostly fury that sent him screaming back to his car. He never returned. The police arrested him for assault in violation of the restraining order. Last I heard, he took a plea deal and would be imprisoned for 5 years. The young mother stayed with us for 6 months, healing, building her strength, learning to trust again. When she left, she had a new job, a small apartment in a safe neighborhood, and full custody of her daughter. She cried when she hugged me goodbye. "You saved my life," she said. "I just gave you the tools to save yourself," I replied. "Esals, that's what this place is for." After she left, Catherine and I sat in the library, the fire crackling peacefully. "We've helped 83 women now," I said, reviewing the Foundation's records. 83 lives, saved or changed. "Your mother would be so proud," Catherine said softly. "And not just for the Foundation. For you. For the woman you've become despite everything they did to you." I looked up at the portrait I'd commissioned of my mother, hanging above the fireplace. I'd never had a good photo of her. Celeste had destroyed them all, but Catherine had seen her and described her to the artist in perfect detail. Now my mother looked down on me, forever young, forever kind, with my same dark eyes and stubborn chin. "I wish she could have seen this," I said. "The manor restored, the Foundation, all of it." "Who says she can't?" Catherine smiled mysteriously. "Death isn't always an ending, Elena. I'm proof of that. Maybe she's been watching all along." The thought comforted me more than I expected. I liked to imagine my mother's spirit somewhere safe and happy, proud of what I'd built, finally at peace, knowing justice had been served. 10 years after the trial, I received a letter from the parole board. My father was up for early release, citing good behavior and overcrowding at the prison. They wanted to know if I had any objections. I wrote back with a detailed list of objections, including psychological evaluations from several of the women we'd helped who'd suffered similar abuse from family members. I testified at the parole hearing via video conference, speaking calmly and clearly about his crimes, his lack of true remorse, the danger he still posed. The parole was denied. He would serve his full sentence. Celeste's parole hearing was the following year. She'd deteriorated badly in prison. Her beauty faded, her mind fractured by whatever Catherine had done to her and her own guilt. Her lawyer tried to argue she was too mentally unstable to be a danger anymore. I testified again, and this time I brought one of our success stories, a woman who'd been poisoned by her own mother, just as I had been. She spoke about her recovery, her trauma, how she still had nightmares about trusting the wrong person with her food. Celeste's parole was also denied. Vanessa's hearing was different. She'd served 8 years of her 10-year sentence, had gotten her degree, volunteered in the prison library, genuinely seemed reformed. Her lawyer was cautiously optimistic. I thought long and hard before the hearing. Catherine and I talked about it for hours. "She was young," Catherine said. "Corrupted by her mother, yes, but she never actually tried to hurt you directly. She just let it happen. That's still guilt, but it's different. If she gets out, will she be a threat?" "I've been watching her," Catherine admitted. "In dreams, in reflections. She's different now. Prison changed her. She has genuine remorse." At the hearing, I spoke about Vanessa's crimes, but also about her rehabilitation. I said I would support her parole on 2 conditions. She never contacted my father or mother again, and she participated in the foundation's mentorship program, sharing her story with other young women who'd been manipulated by family members. The parole board agreed. Vanessa was released 6 months later. Our first meeting was awkward. She'd aged more than the years warranted, her perfect beauty dimmed by stress and regret. We met in my office at the manor, Catherine invisible but present, ready to intervene if needed. "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "For giving me a chance. For speaking up for me. I don't deserve it." "No," I agreed, unnamed. "You don't. But maybe you can earn it." Over the next year, Vanessa worked with the foundation. She spoke at schools, at women's shelters, at court-ordered family therapy sessions. She talked about how she'd been raised to value appearance over character, money over morality, about how her mother's poison had been psychological as well as literal. Some people didn't believe her. Transformation. They said she was just another manipulator. But I watched her closely, and Catherine watched her even more closely, and gradually, we both came to believe she was genuine. "She's not the same person she was," Catherine observed after one of Vanessa's speaking events. "She's been broken and rebuilt into something better." I thought about my own transformation, from invisible stepdaughter to powerful philanthropist. "Sometimes breaking is necessary, I must necessary," I said. 15 years after my family tried to kill me, Blackthorn Manor had become a regional landmark. We'd helped over 300 women, trained dozens of counselors and social workers, influenced policy changes in domestic violence law. My foundation was nationally recognized. I'd been interviewed by major news outlets, invited to speak at conferences, asked to consult on several high-profile abuse cases. The manor itself had become almost sentient under Catherine's influence and my care. It protected its residents with fierce devotion. Abusers who tried to breach our walls found themselves suddenly disoriented, losing their way in grounds that should have been simple to navigate. Our security system barely needed to function. The house itself was the best security. I was 35, wealthy, powerful, and happy. I'd turned my tragedy into triumph, my abandonment into purpose. I'd taken the ruin they'd left me in and built an empire of protection and justice. My father died in prison of a heart attack when I was 37. I felt nothing when I received the news, not satisfaction, not grief, just a distant acknowledgement that a chapter had closed. I didn't attend his funeral. I did send flowers with a card that read, "From the daughter you tried to erase." Celeste followed 3 years later, her mind destroyed by guilt and supernatural torment, dying alone in a prison psychiatric ward. I felt slightly more sympathy for her than for my father, but only slightly. She'd made her choices. Vanessa, against all odds, thrived. She got her master's degree in social work, married a kind man who knew her full history and loved her anyway, had a daughter she named Catherine. She asked my permission first, crying as she explained that the name represented transformation and redemption to her. I said yes, and Catherine, my Catherine, was deeply moved. On the 20th anniversary of the trial, I threw another party at the manor. This time, I invited everyone who'd helped me, the lawyers who'd prosecuted my family, the journalists who'd exposed the truth, the women we'd helped who wanted to celebrate how far they'd come. The manor glowed with light and life. Music floated through the restored rooms. The gardens bloomed with flowers. Catherine appeared to me in the library, more solid and vibrant than I'd ever seen her. "This is what I wanted," she said, looking around at the celebration. "When I cursed this place all those years ago, I was thinking only of revenge, but you've transformed it into something better. You've made Blackthorn Manor a place of healing and strength." "We did it together," I corrected her. "I couldn't have survived without you." "And I would have been trapped in anger and pain without you," she replied. "You gave me purpose beyond vengeance. You gave me peace." As the party continued around us, Catherine began to glow brighter. I realized with a jolt of panic what was happening. "No," I said, don't go, please." "I'm not going," she said gently. I'm just changing. The curse is lifting. I'm not trapped anymore. I can stay or go as I choose." "Then stay. Please stay." She smiled, and it was the warmest expression I'd ever seen on her face. "Always. This is my home. You're my family. I'm not bound anymore, but I choose to be here." The glow faded and she remained, but something was different. She looked more peaceful, less like a ghost, and more like a guardian spirit. The house itself seemed to sigh contentedly, settling into a new equilibrium. We stood together and watched the celebration. Survivors dancing, laughing, healing. Every woman there had been broken by family, by people who should have loved them. Everyone had found their way to Blackthorn Manor and found strength. I thought about the young woman I'd been, invisible and dying in a collapsing ruin. I thought about how I'd tamed a ghost and gained power beyond imagining. I thought about revenge and justice and the fine line between them. Most of all, I thought about the family I'd lost and the family I'd built. Blood wasn't always thicker than water. Sometimes the people who saved you were the ones who'd been dead for 150 years. Sometimes home wasn't where you were born, but where you rebuilt yourself from ashes. Vanessa approached me nervously, her daughter, little Catherine, holding her hand. "Thank you," Vanessa said for perhaps the 100th time. "For everything. For not giving up on me." "Thank you," I replied, "for proving people can change." Little Catherine looked up at Ghost Catherine, seeing her as clearly as I did, and waved. Ghost Catherine knelt down to the child's level, her translucent form shimmering in the candlelight, and waved back. The little girl giggled. "She's beautiful," Catherine whispered to Vanessa, though Vanessa couldn't hear her. But somehow, on some level, I think Vanessa understood. She looked around the library with tears in her eyes, at the restored beauty, at the women who'd found sanctuary here, at the life her stepsister had built from ruins. "I spent so long being jealous of you," Vanessa said quietly. "Isn't that insane? I had everything, beauty, money, attention, and I was jealous of you. Mother made me that way. She said you were competition, that your existence diminished mine." I believed her. She wiped her eyes. "But you were never the problem. I was. We were. And you had every right to destroy us completely." "I thought about it," admitted. "Catherine taught me I had the power. The Blackthorn curse could have done worse than prison." "Why didn't you?" I considered the question. 20 years ago, in the depths of that collapsing manor, I'd wanted them all dead. I'd burned with rage so intense it had awakened a centuries-old curse. But Catherine had taught me something more valuable than revenge. Because being like you, like the old you, like Celeste, like my father, would have meant they won, I said. They tried to erase me, make me nothing. Building this, helping others, that's how I proved I was always someone. Someone worth more than they could ever understand. Vanessa nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worth the second chance you gave me." "Good," I said simply. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, I stood on the front steps of Blackthorn Manor and watched them go. Each woman paused to hug me, to thank me, to promise to stay in touch. Some were still fragile, healing from fresh wounds. Others were years into their recovery, strong and independent, returning to celebrate how far they'd come. This was my legacy, not the money or the power or the revenge I'd taken on my family. These women, their survival, their strength, this was what mattered. Catherine joined me on the steps, and together we watched the last car disappear down the long driveway. "Tired?" she asked. Satisfied," I corrected. We went back inside, and I walked through the manor, turning off lights, straightening furniture, returning the house to quiet order. In every room, I saw layers of history. Catherine's murder, my mother's ghost in the walls she'd loved, my own near death and resurrection, and now hundreds of women who'd found safety here. The house creaked and settled around us, no longer threatening, but protective. I'd tamed it, yes, but more accurately, we'd chosen each other. The Blackthorn curse had found its true purpose in me, and I'd found my strength in it. I ended my walk in Catherine's memorial room, the place where she'd died. We'd kept it largely untouched, preserving the blood-stained symbols on the floor under protective glass, mounting her journals on the walls, creating a space that honored her memory and her sacrifice. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked her. "The curse, the haunting, all those years of anger?" "Every day," she said honestly. "Rage is exhausting, even for a ghost. It consumed me for so long that I'd forgotten what peace felt like. She looked around the room. But if I hadn't been here, trapped and angry, I wouldn't have been able to save you. And you wouldn't have been able to save all those other women. So maybe even the worst things can lead somewhere good. That's almost optimistic of you. She laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the silent room. Don't get used to it. I'm still a vengeful ghost. I just have better targets now. It was true. Catherine had become the Foundation's silent guardian, appearing in the dreams of abusers to terrify them into staying away, manifesting as a protective presence for women in danger, using her curse to tip the scales of justice when legal systems failed. Just last month, a woman's ex-husband had violated his restraining order and tried to kidnap their children from school. He'd made it to the parking lot before his car mysteriously died. When he'd gotten out to check the engine, he'd seen Catherine's face in every car window around him. He'd run screaming and was arrested 3 blocks away, babbling about ghosts. The children were safe. I've been thinking, Catherine said, interrupting my reverie, about the future. What about it? You should train a successor. Not because you're going anywhere, she added quickly, seeing my expression, but because this work is too important to depend on one person. What if something happens to you? The Foundation needs to survive beyond both of us. She was right, though I didn't like thinking about it. I was 37, healthy, and planning to run the Foundation for decades more. But Catherine had learned the hard way that plans meant nothing when family decided you were expendable. Who did you have in mind? I asked. There's a girl who came to us 6 months ago, Sarah. She's 23, brilliant, and she can see me. I knew who she meant. Sarah had escaped from a cult-like family that had kept her isolated and uneducated until she was 20. At the manor, she'd blossomed, devouring books, taking online courses, asking endless questions. I'd noticed her talking to empty air sometimes, but hadn't realized she was conversing with Catherine. She sees you? Clearly. We've been having long conversations. She understands what we're trying to do here, and she has ideas, good ideas, about expansion, about reaching more women in rural areas where resources are scarce. I thought about it. Training a successor made sense. More than that, it meant the Foundation would outlive me, would continue helping women long after I was gone. The Blackthorn legacy wouldn't end with my death, but would grow and evolve. All right, I said, let's talk to her tomorrow. Sarah was nervous when I called her into my office the next morning. She perched on the edge of her chair, hands twisted in her lap, clearly afraid she'd done something wrong. Relax, I said gently, Chamasim, you're not in trouble. I actually wanted to discuss your future with the Foundation. My future? Her eyes widened. I'm grateful for the shelter and the help, but I figured I'd need to leave soon, make room for someone who needs it more. What if I told you that you could stay permanently? That I want to train you to eventually run the Foundation? She stared at me speechless. Catherine materialized beside her chair, smiling encouragingly. I can see her, Sarah said suddenly, looking at Catherine. The ghost. I wasn't sure if I should mention it. People think you're crazy when you see dead people. I know, I said. I can see her too. Sarah's relief was palpable. Really? So I'm not insane? Not even a little bit, Catherine assured her. You have a gift, Sarah. Sensitivity to the spirit world is rare. Elena and I want to teach you how to use it to help others. Over the next months, Sarah became my apprentice. I taught her about running the Foundation, the finances, the legal aspects, the delicate work of helping traumatized women heal. Catherine taught her about the Blackthorn curse, about how to sense danger, about the history of the manor and the power bound within it. Sarah absorbed everything like a sponge. She had a natural empathy that put residents at ease, a sharp intelligence that grasped complex situations quickly, and an iron will forged by her own survival. She was perfect for the work. One evening, about a year into her training, Sarah came to me with a troubled expression. I need to tell you something, she said, about my family. I braced myself. Family stories from our residents were always difficult. They're trying to find me, she continued. My father and brothers. They've hired a private investigator. They're claiming I was kidnapped, brainwashed. They want to force me to come back. Catherine appeared instantly, her form crackling with protective energy. They won't get near you. They're going to try, Sarah said. They're powerful in their community. They have money, connections. They're talking about deprogramming me like I'm the one who was in a cult. She laughed bitterly. I mean, I was, but it was their cult. Let them try, I said calmly. This manor has defenses they can't imagine. And beyond that, we have lawyers, resources, and evidence of their abuse. We'll bury them in legal paperwork before they get within a mile of you. We did exactly that. When Sarah's family tried to claim she was incompetent and needed a conservatorship, we produced her college transcripts. Straight A's. When they claimed she was being held against her will, we had her testify via video conference about the abuse she'd suffered, the isolation, the control. When they tried to paint the foundation as predatory, we had dozens of women testify to our legitimacy and support. The case was dismissed. A restraining order was issued. Sarah's father made the mistake of violating it 3 days later. He drove to the manor at midnight, probably thinking he could sneak onto the grounds and kidnap his daughter. He made it through the front gate. We left it open, a deliberate trap, and halfway up the drive before the manor itself intervened, I watched from my bedroom window as fog rolled in from nowhere, thick and disorienting. Sarah's father's car slowed, stopped. He got out, calling Sarah's name, his voice angry and entitled. Then Catherine appeared. She manifested fully, as solid and terrifying as the moment of her death, blood-stained dress, and rage-filled eyes. Sarah's father screamed, a high, broken sound, and ran. He didn't make it far. Vines from the garden, growing impossibly fast under Catherine's influence, wrapped around his ankles and tripped him. He lay there sobbing until the police arrived 15 minutes later. He was arrested for trespassing and violation of a restraining order. In his booking statement, he claimed the property was cursed, that a ghost had attacked him. The police thought he was on drugs. We didn't correct them. Sarah watched the arrest from the window beside me, her face pale but resolute. Thank you, she whispered. You're family now, I said simply. We protect our own. Catherine nodded in agreement, her ghostly form still crackling with protective energy. The Blackthorn curse protects its daughters, always. Years continued to pass. The foundation expanded, opening satellite offices in 3 other states. Sarah took on more responsibility, eventually becoming co-director. We helped thousands of women, saved countless lives, influenced national policy on domestic violence and family abuse. The manor itself became legendary. Folklorists studied it, paranormal investigators begged for access, which we always denied. The house was not a tourist attraction, it was a sanctuary. But the stories spread anyway. The haunted mansion that protected battered women, the ghost who terrorized abusers, the cursed bloodline turned to justice. On my 50th birthday, we held a small celebration in the library. Sarah was there with her partner, a kind woman she'd met at a conference. Vanessa came with her husband and now 2 daughters, both named after powerful women, Catherine and Elena. Several of our long-term staff attended, along with a few residents who'd become like family. Catherine, as always, was present, though only Sarah and little Catherine could see her clearly. The other little girl, Elena, couldn't see ghosts, but she always seemed to sense Catherine's presence, turning her head to follow movements no one else could track. Speech, Sarah called, and everyone joined in the demand. I stood, glass of wine in hand, and looked around at the faces of people I'd chosen, who'd chosen me. This was family, not bound by blood, but by shared trauma, shared purpose, shared love. 25 years ago, I began, my family left me in a collapsing ruin to die. They thought they were disposing of an inconvenience. What they actually did was awaken something they couldn't control, a curse, a ghost, and my own strength that I'd never known I possessed. I glanced at Catherine, who smiled encouragingly. I could have used that power purely for revenge. Part of me wanted to, but a wise ghost taught me that revenge alone is empty. It satisfies for a moment, but then you're left with nothing but the ashes of your anger. So instead, we built this. I gestured around the room, encompassing the manor, the foundation, everything we'd created. We took a place of death and made it a sanctuary. We took a curse of vengeance and made it a shield for the vulnerable. We took our trauma and transformed it into purpose. I raised my glass higher. To everyone in this room, survivors, warriors, family. To the women we've helped and the women we'll help tomorrow. To second chances and new beginnings. To choosing love over hate, justice over revenge, building over destroying. And to ghosts, Sarah added with a grin, winking at Catherine, who teach us that death isn't always an ending. Everyone drank, laughing and wiping away tears. Catherine raised her own ghostly glass and toast, visible only to those who had the gift to see. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Catherine and I sat in the library as we'd done countless times over the years. The fire crackled peacefully. The house settled around us with contented creaks. Do you ever think about them? Catherine asked. Your father, Celeste? Sometimes, I admitted. Less as the years go on. They're not the center of my story anymore. They're barely a footnote. That's the best revenge, Catherine said wisely. Becoming so successful, so happy that they're irrelevant. They tried to erase you, and instead you erased their significance. What about you? I asked. Do you think about your murderers? Only when I'm teaching someone about the curse, she replied. They're cautionary tales now, not personal wounds. Time and purpose heal many things. She paused. I never thought I'd say that. When I died, I thought I'd be angry forever. But you gave me something better than revenge. You gave me meaning. We sat in comfortable silence, ghost and woman, guardian and protected, family by choice rather than blood. What happens when I die? I asked suddenly. The question had been on my mind more as I aged, though I was healthy and planned to live many more decades. Catherine considered. I'll still be here. Sarah can see me and she'll carry on the work. Maybe you'll join me, another Blackthorn ghost protecting the manor. She smiled at the thought. We could haunt this place together, two vengeful spirits turned guardian angels. The idea appealed to me more than it should have. I'd spent my life building this sanctuary. Why shouldn't I spend my death protecting it? I'd like that, I said. Though let's not rush it, I have a lot of living left to do. Agreed. I've grown rather fond of having you alive. We laughed together, and the sound echoed warmly through the house. Somewhere above us, I heard footsteps, probably Sarah checking on the residents one last time before bed, making sure everyone was safe and settled. This was what we'd built. Safety, family, purpose, love. My father had thrown me away, thinking I was nothing. Celeste had tried to poison me, thinking I was weak. Vanessa had dismissed me, thinking I was invisible. They'd all been wrong. I was Elena Blackthorn. Hartley, survivor, philanthropist, curse wielder, ghost tamer. I'd taken their worst intentions and transformed them into strength. I'd taken a collapsing ruin and made it a fortress. I'd tamed a vengeful spirit and gained a sister, a guardian, a friend, and most importantly, I'd helped hundreds of women do the same. Take their trauma, their pain, their rage, and transform it into something powerful and good. The fire burned low. Catherine and I sat together in peaceful silence, two souls bound not by blood or curse, but by choice and purpose. Outside, the manor's grounds were quiet and safe. Inside, women slept without fear, protected by walls both physical and supernatural. This was victory. Not the dramatic climax of a revenge plot, but the quiet, enduring triumph of a life well lived, of good work continued, of love chosen over hate. My family had left me in a collapsing ruin. I'd tamed the ghost that haunted it, saved myself, and built an empire of second chances. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat.